Welcome to the Startup Grind.
All right, I want to thank y'all for coming to Startup Grind tonight. We've got a great speaker that has a lot to tell us. Just a little bit about Startup Grind before we get started. We are a community built to support entrepreneurs. We are here to give you a place to come and learn more. We're all about connecting people. We're here tonight to make friends, not contacts. It's not a place to just kind of swap business cards and add that to your staff. We want you to actually talk to people and get to know what's going on in our city and in the startup world here in Memphis. I think we have a lot of things going on. We'll talk a little bit more about things here at Cowork Memphis and with Startup Grind here in Memphis at the end, but I want to go ahead and get this part of it started. So if you would, stand up for me and let's do a quick clap and get this thing going.
Oh yes, time for action, time for action. Well, I guess I'll introduce myself first off, so we'll know who I am. I'm Rodney Dunnigan. I'm the morning anchor for Local 24, the ABC affiliate here in Memphis, and Phillip Rix, the owner of Phillip Ashley Chocolates, asked me to be his interviewer for this, so I'm honored to do that and to find out a little bit more about him and about his business. Obviously, Phillip Ashley's Chocolates continues to grow and not only has become a big name here in Memphis, but also in Tennessee, and I'm learning globally, so we're going to learn a lot more. So, Phillip, I guess just the first question I want to ask you, before we even get into the chocolates, because we want folks to know more about you and where you come from, just give me a little bit about your background, where you're from, and just went to school, just that background.
Sure. Well, I am a native Memphian. I'm from here. I was born here. I actually went to Bartlett High School, graduated. My dad taught or teaches in the Shelby County schools, Memphis City schools now. Went to MTSU, studied marketing, finance, so nothing to do with what I do now. Had a great time there, and then I went into corporate sales. So I spent my time and career working for companies like FedEx. I worked for a brief period for UPS doing international sales and Apple. So yeah, but from here, spent a lot of time growing. Well, I grew up here, and yeah.
And you went from that corporate world. How did you make that transition? Because we were just talking about that. From years of working in the corporate world to chocolates, folks out there watching may be thinking that doesn't correlate. How did that happen?
Well, I mean, I started, much like most people. Okay, we get out of college, okay, get that career and climb that corporate ladder, so to speak. And so I spent my time grinding and making sure I performed well and just learned that I deal well with people. And so I got into that whole sales arena and corporate sales and really learned, early on, I wasn't built for an office even then. So I spent much of my time in the air, on the road, and that sort of thing, and because that's what suited me. And again, like I said, during that time, I spent a little over 10 years in that industry. And for a while, cooking and that sort of thing was just kind of a hobby. And I had no plans. I was like, okay, go into management, or we're in management, get into upper management, et cetera, and that was a plan. But plans change, and just over time, I learned more about myself just through travels and through the exposure, and learned I had a broader view of who I was and what I wanted to do. And I learned really quickly, working, while we all do in some format, I was like, well, working for someone else just wasn't me, to the degree that I knew I wanted to get into that whole. I knew that inside I'm an entrepreneur by nature, which is why I always stayed in the field and versus just kind of being in an office. But that's what I understood. So just over time, as I evolved, I got more into the culinary industry, and then chocolate was just one of those things that ended up calling out to me.
Yeah. And for you, it was, we were discussing this before we started, it was a turn. You were still working in the corporate world,
Sure.
And you had dabbled into thinking about a different business.
Yeah.
You were planning on getting a promotion that didn't work out, and that kind of pushed you to say, hey, I have to do this.
Sure, and prior to that, several years ago, I got into chocolate, and this was around 2007, 2008. I was still living in Baltimore, and I really began, it was just, I guess, epiphany, really, is the only way to define it. And I was like, okay, chocolate is what I want to do. I was looking at, culinary schools. Well, I don't want to be in the restaurant setting. I don't want to be a caterer or a personal chef. Those are kind of a dime a dozen. but I knew I wanted to do something else with my life and turn something into a business. And it was just like the inclination. Literally, I tell my folks, I told them, and I tell people to this day, you know, I was laying in bed and chocolate just hit me, and you know, it's like that's what I'm going to do. And I literally woke up the next day and started researching. And so I built that over several years, learning about chocolate, researching the market, because again, I knew I wanted to turn it into a business. And chocolate, as it is today, and what I do, really didn't exist then. So I'm learning, you know, on a curve. But yeah, and then, you know, circumstances, be as it may, kind of pushed me into a certain direction, and I was like, okay. Fortunately, at that time, I had built enough traction, and we were at a turning point or a crossroads where I could have gone, you know, one direction, and Phillip Ashley Chocolates wouldn't even exist today. It just so happened I went the other way and was able to continue building it to what it is.
How important was that research early on? I mean, when you were still working in the corporate world, you said you were researching for several years, 2-3 years before you even got into it. How important was that, trying to find your niche or the market that you were going after?
Yeah, vital. I mean, everything you see today stemmed from that. You know, I don't have a traditional education in chocolate or in the culinary industry at all. So I spent my time, honestly, not so much learning how to cook, because fortunately I grew up around, you know, my grandmother, she was a gardener and she cooked everything, and, you know, uncles and were artists by trade, painters and things like that, and, you know, grandfather owned a construction company. So I grew up learning about, you know, how to work with my hands, how to rely on my senses, how to taste things, how this is supposed to be prepared. So thinking about that now, I realized I was receiving my education then. You know, as a kid, you're thinking, hey, please stop bugging me about going out and picking this or that and that sort of thing. But to go to the time where I was researching, that's why I spent all of my time. I wanted to go in an area where today, if I told you, hey, I'm a chocolatier, most folks have never met a chocolatier. I wanted that to be my thing. I didn't want to say, well, I'm this or that. I'm like, okay, you know, I know 15 others. And so that's how chocolate came about. And so then I spent that time researching the market, the industry, the history of chocolate. So there are three areas: the artistry, the history, and the chemistry of chocolate. All of those things, learning about where chocolate came from, the Mesoamerican period, and how it was used by kings, and then Europeans came and discovered it, and they added, you know, sugar and cream, and hence the modern chocolate industry was formed. All the way to just, you know, how the science of chocolate, and, you know, how you're creating ganaches and the process behind that, and the beta crystals that go into tempering. So even the brainiac piece of it, and then the artistry, you know, both the visual and then the sensual or sensory aspect. You know, the visual when you see it, and then the sensory, like, wow, what's happening when you taste what you're tasting. So I spent 2+ years, and all I did was read everything I could, research everything online, videos, everything, and then about that 3rd year is when I really started. I never touched chocolate, played with it at all. I spent a lot of time, and that seems kind of crazy, but I was very methodical about, okay, when I go into this, I want to be seen as an expert. I felt like the practical side would take care of itself, but I first wanted to understand the theory and the concept, and then, because I knew I was going to have to be able to develop my own method too. So.
Yeah. What was that aha moment, or that moment when you said, I can actually make money off this? Because a lot of folks want to have businesses and have ideas, but they don't get off the ground, you can't make that money. What was that instant when you said, I can make something?
Well, it was a process. I went through those moments. Okay, well, first of all, will people even get this? And then people, I like what I'm saying, I like what I hear. Well, will people like the taste of it? And then you get to that stage of fear or whatever, people like it, that, you know, and what I did to really test out my product, I took it to, you know, I did my version of blind focus groups. I would go to large charity events, so I was giving tons of chocolate away. My very first one, so I guess the big aha moment was not that long ago, 2010, the Soup Sunday for youth villages at the FedEx Forum. This was the first big kind of my unveiling of what I've been doing. I had already been at Apple for a year then. And so you kind of inner circle people or coworkers, they've been tasting things and, oh, I like that, but I didn't really trust that as much because, again, friends and people, they may just be saying, I like it because they don't want to hurt my feelings. But I knew that I was going to have to put it in an environment where that it was, I was unknown, untested, and all of that. And so I agreed to do the soup Sunday. I was like, yeah, it's about 400 or 500 people. This is the first one. Like, man, so I have to make chocolates for this many people first. But I took it. The sweet potato chocolate was one of the chocolates I put out there. Geisha, which is on this tray, and several others. And it was just a hit, and people, were like, hey, where can we get this? And we're not selling it anywhere right now. But that was kind of that moment. And from there, and the chocolates even looked much different then. I was still doing more of that rustic style, hand rolled, and testing some things. So I was very young in the process. But that was the moment where I realized, okay, I may be onto something. And just over the years, it evolved and got to the point where I realized, okay, there's a business, a true business here. But there was definitely a proving ground process.
Now, you said you started out your career in marketing. When you're speaking about these chocolates, because I know you just opened up a recent brick and mortar store
Sure.
here in a Cooper Young area, how exactly do you market the chocolates and just get the word out? Because they can't be an easy business.
Yeah, it's not. Well, there's one side of it that, you say chocolate, and again, I want to find an industry or business that one would capture people's attention. So most folks like chocolate. You have those, and like, man, where do you come from? That don't. But you have that. But all in all, chocolate is one of those is a universal connector, so to speak. But in marketing and building it, I really wanted to find something in the chocolate that spoke to people. So I really just built my brand, and it was just about being seamless in the branding and the marketing. Everything is connected and speaks to one. Even the names of the chocolate are tied to the ingredients, and the ingredients in the chocolate are connected to the way we style it in terms of that. So spent a lot of time, again, when researching and in my career, understanding how people buy, why people buy, when they buy, and all of those things. So I was able to translate that into how we market the products and what we do.
And when you talk about that, what is your target audience? Because I mean, these are kind of high dollar chocolates.
Sure, yeah. And I even like to describe them as affordable luxuries, but I understand that they are on the pricier side, and that's for a reason. I went in wanting to create a luxury product, a luxury chocolate brand. One, because I didn't want to do more of the pedestrian things, and even everything that we do, even the more simplistic things, I really want to kind of go all out and use the very best. We do a bacon candy bar, but we use the best bacon you can find, and we use the best dark chocolate you can find. And with the chocolates, everything is fresh. We don't use any artificial preservatives, additives, and things like that. So our market is for the person that is looking for the very best at whatever point they are in their life. If there's something, hey, I really want to treat myself. Man, I just did really well at the office, and I need to go find something that I feel like spending money on that one time. Or you have that guy, money is no object, or woman that money is no object, and I just want to go splurge because I can. But we have that. There's an option for them out there before they may have to go, particularly in the Memphis market. They may have had to go elsewhere, and then if they're in LA or New York, well, we can get it to you. So.
And speaking of New York and LA, I know your business is relatively new, but I mean, you seem to be expanding a lot. You told me this coming weekend you're doing some things at Chattanooga, and I told you before we started this interview, I always see your name and your face and the chocolates and different social mags around town. Just tell us about some of the big things you're doing socially here in town,
Sure.
and also, in LA. I know you're doing some things there.
For starters, when I began this, again, just coming from the experience I had and traveling all over, I really looked at just the world in general, as they say, as a flat thing. Why? So I felt like why be bound to a specific location, even though obviously you have to physically be located somewhere. If you have a brick and mortar and that sort of thing. But dynamically speaking, I want it to be boundless or boundaryless, and be able to, reach someone wherever they're in Portland, Maine, or Saratoga, Florida, or wherever they are. We can, one, get their attention, and then, hey, now you have my attention, how do we get these chocolates? Okay, well, because we can ship them to you. So spend a lot of time, thinking about the logistics and the supply chain system that we establish, and then how do we market using social media, using traditional media. So how do we get to the people in LA? So we've done events out there with the Academy Awards and with the Emmys. We just recently did the FedEx Cup playoffs. We designed all the chocolates for the golf tournament finals in Atlanta. So been able to get in front of a lot of people because of the way we present the chocolates as a high-end or a high-touch element. And so it's unique. It's not your normal gift. And it's something that is ever changing. We have over 160 flavors, but that's today. 2 months ago we had 140. So I'm constantly thinking, let's do something different. Let's innovate. Let's keep. So when Rodney Gunnigan comes into the store, this week he gets something, and then he comes into the store a week later, he's like, well, I have to get something because none of this was here before. So, and that's the process that we go about.
And when you talk about that startup grind, just talk about the grind of starting a new business, because you have to do all this by yourself.
Sure.
I mean, is this like a 7-day-a-week, almost 24-hour-a-day sort of business?
Yeah, I tell people, even when you have a support system, family and friends and, eventual investors and that sort of thing, it's still a lonely road because a lot of times people don't realize that grind. And, you're always thinking about, well, if it's not, what can I do? What more can I do to get the people's attention, or to make more sales, or to continue to evolve and solidify, what it is we're doing? Or, man, I have to make payroll, or, we have to keep the lights on, even the basic things, the day-to-day operations. So that's definitely a grind. But also, with what I do in particular, I'm constantly thinking about what's next, or what more can I do? Because again, I don't want to be pigeonholed into one arena. We're not just retail. We have an entire program for corporations. We have a program for hospitality, and we're even looking at ways to reach markets in ways, instead of just building a facility there, how do we integrate or enter emerging markets and do it in a way that's cost effective but has a huge return. So, that grind is ever going, because it's just, at the end of the day, a business wants to grow, and ensure a business just wants more. And so I don't think that grind ever stops.
Yeah. The business that you have here in Cooper Young, how is that working as far as having a brick and mortar, and are there plans for any more opening up stores, whether it be around Tennessee or around the country?
Yeah, I mean, so the brick and mortar, 798 South Cooper, has been open for just under a year. It'll be a year, November the 6th. And it's been great. Now, opening that store was the best thing we could have done, simply because it adds validity. It gives you that credibility of, okay, well, they exist. Because prior to that, whenever we did an event, whenever we went anywhere, the first question people would ask after they had the chocolate was, where are you located? And then we're online and that sort of thing. And particularly when you're dealing with the local market, the local community, that doesn't really translate. The Memphis community in particular, they want to see it, touch it, feel it, and be a part of whatever it is that they're investing their money in. When they're buying our chocolates, we look, hey, you're investing in this experience, and which is why, again, we put so much time. I put so much time into every element. But the brick and mortar really helped kind of communicate that without saying anything. Essentially, it's like, hey, we're located 798, cool, we can come out there, and then they see it. And then it all kind of comes together and coalesces, and okay, this makes sense. And then they come back. So whereas you may have purchased online or in a pop-up store that we were doing prior to one, assess, hey, again, is this something that Memphis, even Memphians, because we're here, we have to survive here, will they buy this chocolate? We found that, but we're gone tomorrow. Maybe they wanted to come back the next day or something. So now we have a place where they can routinely come, get their chocolates, get their fix, so to speak, but also share them with other people or tell someone that they have somewhere to come to. So it was a big deal. Yeah.
And as far as in this business, do you have a mentor or somebody that you look to for guidance to kind of help you out with this?
I think not specifically. I have a partner, and I have other folks that I listen to and I talk to. But the big thing is I spend a lot of time. I'm very observant, and just over my career, I've been fortunate enough to be around some very talented, very smart, innovative business people, young and old. And so because my dad's a history teacher, so I've always been kind of a historian at heart, and really listening and focusing on, whoever it is I'm around, and absorbing from them. So I actually do more mentoring now myself, but I'm always learning. I'm always looking for those situations where I can, take good things from people and then, be able to offer. So I look at the feedback from my customers as an opportunity for me to be mentored and learning from the clientele, saying, what is it you like, what is it you don't like, what do you respond to? So I'm very involved in that whole process, and I try to develop how we, again, in turn, communicate whatever it is we're doing and try to be thoughtful about that piece. But that's just kind of my approach. So I have a lot of mentors in that sense. I don't have there's not even one person I could say that's there, but that one person kind of changes all the time. So.
Have you received any sort of kickback initially from not having that, I guess, quote unquote, schooling, as far as a chef, pastry chef, or, somebody that you would normally see in this sort of business, as you kind of pick it up as you go? As you're out marketing and trying to, gain business from hotels, have you gotten any sort of kickback or not?
Actually, no. On the other hand, it intrigues people more, because it's less expected that, okay, well, someone without an education in this arena would be able to do something like this. But, I was very methodical about my own education, the research and then the practical side of trial and error, research and development, and all those sort of things. And then, fortunately, I have a very vivid imagination. So, I had to learn how to take those things and rein it in. Someone did ask me, and I actually just thought about it. I have a cherry and pomegranate chocolate on this tray, but that was one of the first chocolates I tried, during my research period. It just dawned on me, and it was a total bomb because I hadn't yet mastered or understood ganache formulas. I didn't understand ratios as it pertains to, what they call emulsifier or liquid to solid and all these different things. But once I understood the rules of chocolate making, I was then able to break the rules, because we do a lot of breaking of the rules, because the things we put in chocolate, if you go in a book, it wouldn't work. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of that, we have some of the chocolates here. If you could kind of, I guess, walk us through and kind of describe, if we can, what we have here, and just how do you put some of these chocolates together?
So yeah, we have an array, and again, like if you were to come into the store, this is just a small sampling of what you would encounter. We have roughly 24, we usually have on par 24 chocolates, because we have up to a 24-piece box. So one of the things that you'll get differently, that I noticed when I was researching, when we send out chocolates, if we ship them, if you order online or something like that, or if there's a chocolatier assortment that we're picking, every single box has a different piece. So if it's a 12-piece box, there's 12 individual pieces versus 2x6 or 3x4, that sort of thing. And so I was it's operationally, it's more taxing, because I have to always make 24 different batches to meet that need. But that was something I wanted to do to, again, separate us and to elevate. When you go and take a 24-piece box of chocolate, well, it's not 2 pieces 12 times. It's 24 different experiences. And so we're speaking, and I say, chocolate is a way to say thank you 24 different times, or in 24 different languages. But what we have here We have chocolate with beer in it. This is Memphis-made soulful ginger. We have something called sugar plum, which is kind of my play on the sugar plum thing for the fall. It's a black currant and aperitif wine, so kind of plummy, tangy, bright, but all dark chocolate. The ever popular pumpkin spice. So we have a lot of other companies that thank that for in terms of coffee and that sort of thing, but I wanted to, you know, I guess quote unquote get on that bandwagon, but I did it differently. It's a white chocolate shell, milk chocolate, pumpkin, but we use Chinese five spice versus like, you know, just cinnamon or pumpkin spice. This white one here is actually Chardonnay and triple cream. We have chocolates with blue cheeses. We have chocolates with goat cheese in them, things like fig jam, goat cheese, and port wine. This one has a triple cream, which is basically a really buttery, almost like brie, but even richer. There's the barbecue chocolate. This is one of our most popular chocolates right here. It's called Memphis. Obviously, we're in the...
And it actually has barbecue in it.
There's real barbecue. We use a sauce, so there's no meat in it. I tell people it's because, you know, people sometimes dietary-wise wonder. But yeah, we smoke the chocolate, so there's a smokiness to it. Basically, like you would approach making barbecue, I just modified some of those methods and use it for chocolate.
And it's pretty interesting, just creative, how you, I guess, kind of spray paint the chocolate, so to speak. And this is something that you've learned over the years as well.
Yeah. I taught myself. I bought a compressor and an airbrush gun and said, you know, let's do it. And really the whole point behind that is to make them look like stones or jewels, or as I used to say, that they were born that way. It's just, you know, this thing is there and this is the way it was supposed to be. It doesn't look like I tried to make it look that, although obviously I did. But, you know, another one is yuzu and vanilla bean. The pink heart there is the one we're doing for Breast Cancer Month. It's pomegranate, blood orange, and passion fruit. So, I mean, we have, like I said, so many different things. An entire line of caramels with sea salts, cheeses. We have spicy chocolates. We have one really cool one. It's a ghost pepper chocolate, which is extremely hot, but we temper it down a bit, and then we roll it in popping sugar or pop rocks,
Wow.
the common term. It's called a fireball, and so it's hot, and then it's popping in your mouth, and
Wow,
doing
that's
all these
amazing.
other things. So.
You know, when I look at these chocolates, obviously I've had some of these chocolates, so I know they're delicious.
Yeah.
But it's amazing. I'm sure people must say, I really don't want to eat it just because it's so pretty. I don't want to, you know, mess it up.
Yeah, and that's deliberate. We definitely want, because from the onset, from the moment you see it, or particularly if you present it as a gift and when you open it, well, even with the packaging, everything is designed to make you feel like, okay, what I have here is special. And going back to your previous comment, yeah, you know, every element is designed to justify the cost to where, okay, we're not thinking about the price. You know, we spent $49 on a 12-piece box, you know, and that's considerably higher than some others, but, you know, the effort that goes into literally every single piece that went in there, and then you're able to come in when you come into the shop. We're actually working on this with the website, so again, continue to innovate to where you have a virtual chocolate experience where you go in, I want this piece to go on my box, and you're in Idaho, or wherever you may be, or London, for instance, and you're able to, like you're in the store, you'll see what we offer that day, and you'll be able to build your own box and ship it.
Wow. And I know for you, too, it's not only about the profits, but it's about giving back to the community. I know you have a couple of big projects. I know later on this month you have the Masquerade Ball. Just tell me about some of the community service things you have going on and why you felt it was important to get involved.
Yeah, I really thought it was important. One of the things to give back to the community, really kind of saying thank you to the community, one, for supporting what we do, because obviously without them, we wouldn't be able to exist. But I've always been a giver at heart, and so I wanted to have a way to be able to, you know, do things to support organizations and things like that. So, and do it in a meaningful way, but also do it in a way where people can have fun. So specifically, the end of this month, and thankful to local Memphis and local cares, we're having our Masquerade charity ball at the Pink Palace. So that's on Halloween. It's a black tie event, and we're going all out, pulling no stops. Very fancy, very high end, just like the chocolates. but really going to be a good time. So we were able to get First Tennessee on board as our presenting sponsor, local Memphis and local Cares as our media sponsor, iHeartMedia, Memphis, and so on. And so really was able to put together a party that we hope was going to be something that blows people's mind. But just things like that, but even the simple things, just donating to events or bringing in kids to do tours and talk to them. It's just really, Memphis is just one of those communities, one that I think does it better than anywhere else in the country, that understands the importance of, well, not just making money or not just being in Memphis, but being a Memphian. So,
Overall, for Phillip Ashley, whether it be 10, 20 years down the line, what is the ultimate goal?
Well, for this to exist 50 years after I'm gone is really kind of the big picture thing, that whole legacy thing. But, even more direct, just to continue to grow this into a major brand. Nike had a start, Apple started in the garage, those sorts of things. Starbucks started in someone's kitchen, and it takes time, and for that matter, really that grind part goes back to that. It's never ending. You're constantly seeking accounts. You're constantly improving on how you deliver on whatever it is you're working on or promising in the product, and keeping that up to date and keeping that relevant and just being relevant, because the times are ever changing. With social media, you're constantly that's at the speed of sound now, speed of light, or speed of thought, more so. And we're constantly trying to be in front of people all the time and do it in meaningful ways. So really growing more stores, however that ends up looking, growing physical presences or presence in other markets. Again, however, we're developing kind of unique ways to approach that. But that's the goal, to continue to build our presence and to build our brand into something that's as recognizable as some of those others, and that's immediate more so. It's like, okay, when you think of chocolate, well, we need to go get Phillip Ashley chocolate just as you would something else. So.
What sort of advice would you have for, maybe business owners just starting out, or those folks who have ideas that may work in the corporate field or have some other sort of job, but they're kind of scared to jump because they say, point blank, I have to pay the bills, so I need this job. So that's a scary jump. Yeah. What sort of advice would you have?
Well, that's reality, and that's the same thing. And there's really no easy, some of us, even when it's more of a push, the inclination is, okay, let me go back to what I was used to, or, it's so hard to, because there's so many factors to take into account, and there's nothing's a sure thing. Like, this is still not a sure thing. Obviously we're doing a lot and there's a lot of work that goes into it. But my advice is, one, to figure out what it is you love. And I knew two things. I loved people, and I loved being able to, I love the food industry eventually, or in a sense that I was able to bring those two things together. This is just, I tell people what I do is tell stories with chocolate. This allows me to talk all the time. I always used to get in trouble in school for talking too much. Ms. Kingery used to battle me in third grade for that, but hey, it all paid off.
Yeah.
But no, so my advice is, one, figure out what it is that, you would do. And they say you would do it for no money or for free, and that's real. I think when people say that, it's, well, would you do this for no money in the beginning, knowing that there's a bigger, there's a payoff in the end? Because no one goes into business to do anything for free, so that's not a continual existence sort of thing. But I've sacrificed tons and gone without and that sort of thing. So I say be prepared. Nothing's ever easy about this sort of thing, and again, to point back to this, grind is an appropriate term because that's what it is. But it becomes a lot smoother with the right planning, the right support system, the right network, and all of those things. So I think having a clear plan, understanding who you are, what you're skilled at, what you do, what you love, and then bringing all those other things around it. But even then, when everything seems to, is as tight as it can possibly be, particularly on paper, there's always the unexpected. So, there's that big emotional piece. There's times when your greatest ally sometimes is like, man, look, I don't know about you so that kind of stuff. And you have to be prepared to look within, because there's a lot of alone time, even, when you're in a crowd of folks and I'm often, kind of inside myself thinking or figuring out things, or just, this is the first time I was able to sit still, that kind of thing. So really, it's such a mixed bag, and if anyone tells you there's just kind of a direct path, there isn't, because I've gone 50 different ways, and I'm doing essentially one thing. And so that's, like I said, so just kind of be prepared for the unexpected, but know that, if the cause is righteous, and if you are, you're really building something that you understand and know that you can put out to market, and also do that sort of research, that at the end of the day, things should turn out right.
Well, I've been asking a lot of questions. I'm sure some folks out here in the audience would like to maybe ask you a few questions. Anybody have anything pressing, potentially, they want to ask, maybe that I didn't ask?
I'd just ask real quick, I mean, you're in the food business, so with respect to the commodity cost associated with, especially cocoa,
Yeah.
how do you manage, or do you hedge, or how do you?
Yeah, and you're right about that. Preparing for the cost was something I definitely had to look forward to, or look into. We do several different things, and part of it is, I think one of the marks that a lot of people miss is, if people talk about, well, the chocolate's expensive and that sort of thing, well, we're, one, prepared for what the market can bear, but also what it will eventually bear. Two, just knowing how to price your product appropriately. Food cost in particular is there's a straight formula, but then you have to also, again, factor in,
Sure.
well, what will going back, what will the market bear? What will people see as a valuable investment in their hard-earned money? Because there's so many people out there competing for your dollar.
Sure.
Why buy mine versus go down the street and spend it on something different? And that's, again, goes back to the marketing and the branding and how we communicate. But cocoa is, and I read an article, this was probably 2 years ago, cocoa, and chocolate in particular, is becoming the new caviar. So in the next 10 years, or the next decade, you'll start seeing chocolate priced as high as some caviar. So we're just bracing ourselves, and again, that's why, again, I'm already doing things so by the time it gets there, our clients, our customers are like, okay, well, it's nothing new. So, but we also spend time putting so much into what we put in the chocolate. And again, we're a small batch provider, or maker, and that's by design. Nothing we do is really designed to be mass produced. Now, we can produce a lot. We can do 10,000 chocolates in a week, but we're not a machinery made product, or mechanized process, I guess. Yes.
You mentioned growing and leaving a legacy. How are you making all the chocolate? Are you imparting these skills to others? And if you are, how are you making sure that the quality remains Phillip Ashley?
Sure. So that's a slow process right now. Yes, I make most of the chocolate. I was making some before I came here, and I'm going to make some when I leave. But I have a young chef that is working for me now, and we're bringing on another, and I basically am working hands-on with them throughout the entire process. Specifically, this is the way we paint it this way. This is why the temperature is such. So just going through the entire process and very hands-on with her education, because while she is trained in the pastry arts, but she wasn't exposed. Chocolate is such a very specific area in the culinary world, which is why you don't see 10 chocolate shops in the city or something like that. Even the largest cities don't have chocolate shops all over the place. But even in Memphis, 6 restaurants opened up in the last month. So it's just a much different industry, which is another reason why I got into it, because I knew, from a business standpoint, if I were to create something that was successful, the competition is much thinner in terms of, it's much more dispersed. You know, the closest chocolatier that does anything remotely close to me is 800 miles away or 600 miles away. So